What's up, everybody? This is Alex Christoforou with the Duran, and I have with me Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. And today we're going to be taking a look at more evidence of election meddling from the Five Eyes. All right, Alexander, the Five Eyes. What are the Five Eyes? Which countries are the Five Eyes? And we've done a video outlining in pretty much in detail how the UK meddled in the US elections to try and thwart Donald Trump from getting into the Oval Office. But we also have evidence now that has surfaced which show the other Five Eye countries also involved in some pretty nefarious stuff to try and get Hillary to win the election and to try to discredit US President Donald Trump. What are the Five Eyes and what's going on here?
Right, the Five Eyes is a euphemism for an alliance of countries which share intelligence with each other. They don't just share intelligence, I mean they actually, to all intents and purposes, operate together in intelligence matters. And they are the English-speaking countries of the NATO alliance. The leader obviously is the United States, then there is Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. They are the Five Eyes. And the key ones in this story are Australia and Britain. They, it turns out, were heavily involved in supporting the Russiagate, in not supporting, I'm sorry, I should say creating the Russiagate narrative during the US presidential election of 2016. We've discussed at great length in previous programs the role of Christopher Steele, the former MI6, the intelligence agent, the former British spy who put together the Trump dossier, which was used by Hillary Clinton, the Democratic National Committee, Fusion GPS, all those people, to try to prove that there was collusion between Donald Trump's campaign and the Russians, and which was then picked up by the FBI and by the intelligence community. And we also know that the British were heavily involved in provoking Trump campaign officials like George Papadopoulos, who was based in Britain, and Carter Page, who also had connections in Britain, that they were all provoked by the British to try to establish links with the Russians which had no real reality. It now turns out that the Australians were very heavily involved in this affair also, and it seems that there were other intelligence agencies also involved, people like Israel, but also especially Estonia, one of the Baltic states, very close politically to Britain. The Estonians and the British have very long-standing political and intelligence agency connections, and Ukraine. And Ukraine is, I think, a major key to this particular puzzle, because it's widely known that Ukrainian intelligence and British intelligence work together extremely closely. And it seems that a lot of this intelligence that was used originated in Ukraine and was passed through to the US through Britain. And it seems that Hillary Clinton and the Democrats were in fact directly in contact with the Ukrainians during the election and were trying to get the Ukrainians to dig up dirt for them about Donald Trump and his campaign, and information that would suggest that there was collusion between Donald Trump and Russia. All
right, so you have Australia, you have the UK, you have the US, and it seems that all of this is being orchestrated by the Clinton campaign. And outside of the Five Eyes, like you mentioned, you have Israel, Estonia, and Ukraine. Which of these countries would you say, though, really led the charge to try and sabotage Donald Trump? Would you say that the UK was the one country that really meddled in the US elections and the other countries were just kind of supporting? Or would you say that all of them were working in unison as the Clintons were directing the efforts?
Right. I think the whole thing originated in the United States. I mean, you know, and I think it originated with the Clinton campaign, but also with certain people within the US intelligence community, like Brennan, who was the former CIA chief, who didn't like some of the things that Donald Trump was saying about wanting better relations with Russia. But so I think that was where the whole initiative for this thing came from. But I also think that the British especially were very heavily involved, and were very heavily involved from a very early stage. I think that they played a key role in all of this. And I suspect that the British also played a big role in getting the Australians and the Estonians and the Ukrainians involved.
That was what I was going to ask you, if you thought the UK began to recruit Australia, and then it just kind of snowballed.
Yeah. I think so, because I mean Australia especially obviously has long-standing historical connections with Britain, and it's important to stress that the Australian officials, and we know two Australian diplomats were involved in all this affair, trying to get Papadopoulos to make admissions. It turns out that those Australian officials were based in Britain, and of course Australia has very long-standing connections to Britain. Australia has the same Queen as Britain does. You know, let's not forget that. It's part of the British Commonwealth. So that there is a very strong intelligence connection between Australia and Britain. And of course, there is a strong history between Australia and Britain. And Australia is a Commonwealth country. It's part of the British Commonwealth. And if we're talking about Estonia, a fact which a lot of people don't know is that Estonia owed its original independence from Russia in the 1920s to the support of Britain. The British fleet intervened in Estonia to try and protect Estonia from the Red Army during the Russian Civil War that followed the revolution. So there is again a very long historic connection between Britain and Estonia. Estonia acts as a major offshore country for the British financial community, and of course it is also, dare I say it, a place where a lot of young Britons go for their holidays and for their stag parties and all those sort of things. So there is a connection between Britain and Estonia also. So I think the British probably did play a pivotal role in all of this, but to get the whole details and to know exactly what happened, we would need a very thorough investigation, and I hope the pressure for that will grow.
Well, it seems like Trump is, we've done videos on this as well, where Trump has backpedaled or pedaled from releasing the FISA documents, the Carter Page documents specifically. And the reason he cited was that certain allies convinced him not to release the unredacted FISA documents for Carter Page. Do you think that those documents will reveal that it was the UK, Australia, and then helping them out, Israel, Estonia, Ukraine? Do you think that's one of the reasons that Trump said, you know what, no matter what these countries tried to do to me, if I release these documents, you know, all hell's going to break loose, and I'm going to expose all these countries to election meddling, which is what they were actually doing?
I think that's exactly what happened. And can I just say something? I think we now know why he backed off, because what I'm sure he was told by the CIA and by the NSA and by all the others, by Coates, who is his Director of National Intelligence, is if you release these documents, you will wreck the Five Eyes. This alliance, which is so important to the United States in order for it to carry out its global surveillance. But if it turns out to the whole world, to the American people, that countries like Britain and Australia were so heavily involved in engineering this whole Russiagate hoax, then I think you will find that the entire alliance, the entire Five Eyes alliance, is going to be placed in jeopardy. And I think that was probably what caused him to back off. So I think we now have a much clearer understanding of why he didn't do it.
And so would it be fair to say that we're not going to get those unredacted versions of the FISA requests? Because whether he releases them, whether he had released them or he's going to release them in the future, what it's going to show, it appears to me conclusively, is that, you know, the whole Russiagate thing was a hoax, which we've been reporting that it was a hoax now for the better part of 2 years, but it's going to show that for sure. And it's also going to show that the UK and Australia and Israel and these other countries were in fact meddling in the US elections, conclusively meddling in the US elections.
Indeed so, and I mean that's the point. I mean, it's not just a hoax. It is a hoax that appears to have been the product of a conspiracy involving the intelligence agencies of several countries. And that is a very disturbing and worrying thing. And of course, if that is going to be exposed, then that is huge. I mean, that is absolutely enormous. And one can very well understand why there is huge nervousness in the United States about having that whole thing exposed. Because here we have the United States rolling out sanctions against Russia because Russia meddled in the US election, supposedly. If it turns out that it wasn't Russia that was meddling in the US election, but the United States' own allies, Britain, Australia and the others, what does the United States do? Is it going to act consistently and sanction them also? Well, I'm not expecting that to happen. But I mean, one can get a sense of the kind of crisis but in relations between the United States and these very key allies that would cause. So, whether will it all come out in the light of day? I think the answer is eventually it will, but clearly it is going to take a very long time. And those of us who were hoping a few weeks ago that it was about to happen have been disappointed.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the story just faded away. Not even Fox News followed up on the report,
which is a very interesting sign, by the way, because of course, if it's been fading away like that, it shows that there's somebody been phoning up all the various people and telling them, please don't report this too much, because if you do, it will impact on the national security position of the United States. So that's probably why that story has died. And as I said, given that the whole Five Eyes alliance might be placed in jeopardy, you can understand why they are reacting in the way they are.
Finally, Alexander, this must be a very bitter pill for Trump to swallow, because I would imagine, what do you think? He has to keep quiet about this, knowing that the UK and Australia and Ukraine and Estonia and Israel, were actively conspiring and colluding against him, but he cannot release it. I mean, it must be driving him crazy.
It must be driving him crazy. But I'm going to say something about Donald Trump. And this is a thing that I always say about him. He is an extremely clever politician. And I think he knows that at some point that he's got to bide his time. At this moment in time, he's got a very difficult midterm elections that he's facing in November. If those go well for him, if his political situation improves, and the word that's going out now is that the Mueller investigation is probably reaching its end point. Even James Comey, the former FBI director, said that. And is going to say that there was no collusion between the Russians and the Donald Trump campaign. If we reach that point, then I suspect that he will revisit this issue. And Donald Trump does not come across to me as the kind of person who forgives and forgets very easily. So I think that people in Britain and in Estonia and in Australia and in Ukraine and to a lesser extent in Israel may find that they've been given a reprieve rather than a general pardon. But we shall see.
Let's hope we see, because we all want to see those unredacted documents. That's for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on the notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. And visit the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support the Duran. And in the description box down below, you'll find links to our Patreon and PayPal pages. Please donate to us, because it really helps us a lot and helps us create videos like this for for you. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you once again. Until next time, take care.